Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, or welcome to the channel if you're new here. I've had a lot of new people join lately, so thanks for popping in and checking things out. This is episode 43 of my emergency storage shed clean out series. Let's go and have a look while I'm talking. For those that don't know what I do, I'm into recycling. I'm into showing you how to fix things. I'm into showing you what to do with stuff. We clean out houses and everything, sheds and that, in a professional manner, often deceased estates. And for one reason or another, my shed here is absolute chaos. Look, there's if you go back to the start of this playlist, I explained it quite a few times. We're trying to empty this shed. I'll show you what we've got in front of us. This shed extension to my workshop was built in emergency situations. I was in my old second-hand shop for almost 20 years, acquired a lot of stuff, sometimes totally unknown boxes of things that I've cleaned out of other people's sheds. And I've been working through this one box or, a decent amount each week. I've committed to that. One of my subscribers suggested that was a good idea, and I've stuck with it. I think that was Wayne from memory. And I'm standing right in the doorway now, and we've actually got some space. And I've also been adding up roughly what I'm selling out of here as we go, and I think we're over $7,000 worth of stuff. Look, it turns up, some of it's scrap, some of it's treasures, some of it I just don't know. There's old radios, there's CRT TVs, there's some stuff from my parents' farm. There's all sorts of stuff, and it's pretty interesting going through it. So we're going to do a box today. This is probably going to be a scrapping video, this one, because this is next in the line of fire, and it's a box of old circuit breakers and possibly fuse box. I think they're all circuit breakers, and I would have put them aside years ago because I think I remember hearing that there's silver in them. I know there'll be silver contacts, there'll be some brass, there may be some copper. So we're going to decide what to do with that lot, and that will clean off that next shelf. And eventually, well, it won't take too long, and we'll get that shelf unit out of here, and we'll get to the next level of, or layer of stuff. And this shed goes back at least 20 feet. And I can't wait to get it all cleaned up and set up as a workshop so I can get into some more repairs. But by the same token, I'm really enjoying this unboxing. I hope you guys are too. For all my regular subscribers, you'll know what's been going on lately. Unfortunately, we lost Dad early last week. We had a family memorial earlier this week. I've done a lot of driving lately because I had a big table tennis tournament to go to last weekend as well. And on top of that, I managed to pick up COVID. So I only had that 2 or 3 days ago. I'm feeling like I've recovered pretty quickly, but I am pacing myself. Apologies if I'm a bit croaky. Let's make some room and work out what we're going to do with these circuit breakers. Oh, and I would also like to really thank all of you who sent lovely comments and messages on the passing of Dad. I will be putting out a special video shortly, maybe in a week or two, which actually is a documentary on Dad had an accident about 17 or 18 years ago and lost a leg, and he was an inspiration to the family. He still is. And my cousin Nick did a short documentary video, and he's given me permission to put it on my channel. So look out for that one. I'm sure you'll really enjoy that and appreciate what he means to us. Still does mean it to us. All right, let's get into this box. One of the lessons I like to teach on my page when cleaning up and when sorting out and how to process stuff is to deal with it. Don't cherry pick. If you've got to clean up a shed like I have to do here, and I did fail to mention to any new people that it all got moved very quickly to here because the shop I was in was sold, and it was sold with vacant possession. And surprisingly to me, it sold very quickly. And yeah, I had to get out by a set date, and we were under a lot of pressure at the time. So dealing with stuff, don't cherry pick. This was the next box. I still don't know right now what I'm going to do with it. We need to make some decisions. I think I'll be trying to scrap some out, and we'll see if they're worth it. Probably the first step will be just to sort them into particular types, and we might do just a little bit of a trial on each type and see, is there much stuff in here to sell, or as far as scrap goes, can we sell these units as going units? I think that's probably unlikely with electrical stuff like this because of safety issues. I don't know their history. They're all second-hand. and I presume they've been removed for a reason. So I'm not going to investigate the sale of these in this case, but many times I do look at retailing parts or even repairing something. Much better value and much better for the circular economy to keep something going rather than scrap it. Scrapping is probably the lowest value, but I think that's where we're down to on these. So I will just go through and sort the whole box into similar items, and we'll have a look at each lot, see how hard they are to get apart, what's inside them, and whether they're worth it. The box has been unpacked. There's a lot of these single circuit breakers, all different brands, mostly a similar era. There's some older looking ones here, including a couple of large ones, and I'm not even sure what these ones are. They're not switches, but oh, maybe they are. Maybe they're circuit breakers of some sort. A few double ones with a reset button. Maybe it's got an RCD built into it or something. There were 3 washing machine timers, so they're not really applicable to this video. We'll put them aside. You can get lots of silver contact buttons out of those, but they're very small. We might do a separate video on those at some stage. It's not something I would muck around with. I would probably put them straight in the e-waste box to go to the transfer station, but we'll put them aside. We'll do a video on them at some stage. Some 3 gang, well, all much the same as the single ones. So, there's one ceramic fuse that I'll take to the shop. So it'll be interesting to see what the result is from this lot. There were a couple of weird things. I'm not even sure what these is. Some time of timer, a programmable thing. It's very light, so we're not going to include that. I think this is a timer of some sort. I'm not going to include that either. And I don't even know what this is. So, and they're very light, so we'll pretend they weren't in the box. I'll put them straight in the e-waste box. So let's work out what to do. Now, I've done a bit of research, as all good scrappers should, and there was someone on eBay actually selling a box of old circuit breakers for their scrap metal recovery, and I think there was about 5 kilos, and I think he got $30, one bid. Obviously, postage is an issue, but it does at least show that scrappers are probably after these and they like to pull them apart. So not necessarily going to be, straight in the e-waste tub. There might be some value even if you don't want to touch them. The next option, of course, is to scrap them out to see what we get. And I found a couple of sellers that were selling contacts out of circuit breakers, and we'll show you what they look like once we get into them. The older ones appear to have better silver content, and then there was another seller that was had success just selling the silver buttons in, gone to the trouble of taking the actual silver contacts off. He got a really good price per kilo, but of course there's a lot of work involved. So we'll have a look at that a little bit later in this video. Let's scrap out a few and see what the go is. I'm thinking the single ones are probably going to be the most work for what we get. Most of these are actually riveted together. In fact, I think they all are. So we're going to need to drill the heads off the rivets, although some scrappers, particularly Ian Matthews, who loves to wield a hammer or an ommer, I think I saw a video recently where he just laid into them and bits of plastic went all around the place, and so did half the precious metal. I'm not so violent in my videos. I'm going to maybe try and drill the rivets out. I think the gangs might be easier to take apart because once you take the rivet out, suddenly you've got 3 switches, maybe, not sure. So we'll start with some singles, see what's involved, see which group we kind of get the better looking materials from, and we'll assess it as we go. Okay, now any metal that they use as a rivet is going to be fairly soft. Obviously, you want to pick the side that's easiest to drill out. Usually they're just pinned over on one side. These ones have a head on the other side. They look like perhaps aluminium. So a sharp drill bit shouldn't take much at all to drill the end of it off. Although the problem we have sometimes is the whole rivet spins, and this one is. So that can be a bit of a bugger. All right, that one came off okay. So sometimes if you just angle the drill around, it manages to work through it. You do have to be careful, of course, not to drill your fingers doing it this way. So either maybe put it in a vise or hold it in a glove. But I think that's enough to get the rivets out. I might have to just poke them through. So that was pretty easy here. Of course, if you save every little bit of scrap, you've got some aluminium to start with. All right, so that's easy to get into. And then we have a lot of contacts. Now we're going to get some springs. We're going to get a bit of hardware. We're going to get some copper. We're also going to get brass, but possibly steel. Some of it will be plated, so we do need to check it all. And every make of circuit breaker is probably going to be different. Let's get this spring out before it flicks us in the face. It's got it. So, you know, I save springs to sell. There's some nice contacts on there. Look at the size of that. Big silver contact there, one each side. And there's a fair amount of silver in some of these. Usually there's a layer of silver onto copper, but sometimes the entire stud, if you like, is actually silver, especially in the older ones. Whoops. And the bit's just flown off the bench, but that was just a bit of plastic. I'm trying to kind of do this one-handed. So we'll go through this section, what we've got in just this one circuit breaker, and then I'll do a few off camera and we'll make a bit of a pile and just see if there's any real difference. This last one's held in with a spring. We're also going to have a bit of plastic rubbish in this scrap out as well, unfortunately. And we can get that spring out. There we go, that's got it. And some nice silver contacts there as well. All right, I'll do a few off camera. We'll make a bit of a pile and we'll just check it with the magnet and see what we've got. Okay guys, I've been working on some of these small ones, these single circuit breakers, and the advice for today is not all circuit breakers are created equally. A lot of these just simply aren't worth it, in my opinion, and I struggled to be able to pick which ones were good ones and which ones weren't. What we're finding, and I think these are in the more modern ones, they're packed full of stuff. There's a little copper coil in there. It's quite thick copper wire, but it's not overly large. But just about everything else in there is magnetic. There's even things like this bit over here that looks absolutely copper, isn't. It's just copper plated. So very disappointing. I don't know how these work as circuit breakers. It's like they have some sort of relay coil in them. This little heatsink type of thing, again, looks copper. You think, beauty, there's a lot of copper there. Guess what? It's not. Very disappointing. Even the terminals at the end aren't brass. It's just, yeah, I'm not going to worry with those. Occasionally I found one with these nice pieces of genuine copper and nice silver contacts, and I was trying to work out, I did pull one of these ones apart and they're a real pain to get apart too. Plus a lot of them have rivets that are difficult to drill out. I found one here which is good, and it's got nice big silver contacts, and that piece of metal is actually it's actually silver plated. I think it's brass. It may be copper, but it's certainly non-magnetic. So good scrap there, easy to get into. That was a good one, but it was a bit of hit and miss because the same brand. These are both Clipsal ones, and one that looked almost identical. Again, hardly any good scrap metal in there, and no silver contacts to speak of. So it's a bit of a trick, and I think the best way I've been able to tell is to use a magnet. I'll put you back in the stand there for a minute. There's a couple here of the same brand, NHP or something, and one of them is not magnetic, only on the ends, but in the middle it's no magnets, no magnetic, no ferrous material, or hardly anything, a little bit. I reckon that's going to have good contacts in it. This one, magnetic right across. In fact, it'll even hold it on the magnet in the middle. So that's what I was finding with these ones here. If you put a magnet on the back of them, it's strongly magnetic. So I think that's the best way to tell which is going to be a good one and which isn't. I'm not going to scrap these out. They're too difficult to get into. There's not enough value in there for me. I'm going to put all the ones that are strongly magnetic, especially in the middle of them. I'm going to put them all straight in the box to go to the transfer station as e-waste. Not worth the time, in my opinion. And look, I'm coming from an angle where I keep and sell the screws. I keep and sell the springs. And I'm still not interested in pulling those ones apart. But I am happy to go for the ones that have... I'm still going to get the odd spring and the odd screw, but I'm going to get good sized silver terminals or silver contact buttons and pieces of brass and pieces of copper like these ones. So I don't know how that's going to apply to the gangs. Maybe I'll just test them on one end, because I think these are basically just 3 singles riveted together. So yeah, that one's okay. So that might be all right. I reckon we might get some good contacts out of that. That's probably the next thing to do here. Yeah, whereas that one's, oh, don't know, might have to check. But at least that's only got 4 rivets, so it'll be easy to get into and test. But all these other ones here, all these singles, if they're strongly magnetic, they're going straight to the transfer station. I'm not wasting my time on those. So I've been and processed everything here. I didn't think it was worth filming it because it was very repetitive. And the rule that I came up with the magnet is actually 100% spot on. It's the best way to tell if you've got a good circuit breaker. All these are strongly magnetic, even the older ones. I did check a few, and sure enough, any that were magnetic, especially in the center of it, just had hardly any silver contacts in it. And here's another one that I checked. All you've got is that little coil of copper wire, a little bit of braided copper, but most of the other bits, even though they look copper, are just plated. So all those I'm not mucking around with at all. I did scrap out one of these things, and they're like a relay, and it's got quite a decent piece of metal in there, like laminations. Not a relay, sorry, a solenoid. Coil of copper wire. So that one I haven't done yet. And also there was a lot of contacts in there with silver buttons on them. So they're probably worth scrapping out. You can pull the copper wire off that if you're so inclined. I'll probably just throw it into transformers and a bit of heavy steel. So they're okay, yes. I tried one of these things, and this is what I got. Some coils of copper and some brass brackets. And it's like a bimetal resistance strip or something, and it obviously senses current, and the higher current you get, the more it bends or flexes or operates. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but bottom line is that there are some silver contacts, but not very good ones, and really no copper other than a bit of brass, and they were quite tricky to get into. So I don't think I'll worry with those either. A few aluminium rivets I saved, lots of nice springs, lots of hardware which I'll put in jars and sell. And even these old ones, as I said, these old ones, there's a little bit better stuff in them. You'll look at the bracket on this end. That's actually silver plated copper or something. And the terminal, I think the terminal might even be an aluminium terminal. But most of the stuff in there is magnetic again. So anything that's strongly magnetic on the side of it, I'm not going to scrap. But look at the ones that were good. We did find quite a few, even in the gangs. Some of the gangs were quite good. And we've got good solid copper brackets with some really nice silver buttons. Look at all these. So I think it's worth doing the good ones. I'm glad I've discovered a way of screening the good ones from the bad ones without having to drill all the rivets out. So what will we do next? I'll clean the bench off. I'll organise a bit of stuff. And let's look at what sort of value we can get from the good gear here. Okay, let's talk the important stuff. Let's talk money. Was this worthwhile? Most of it, no. The silver is where it's at in these circuit breakers. I've got a little bit of stuff that will go into electric motors, but most of those were trying things that I won't touch again. Only about 25 cents or something there. A little bit of copper. That's number 2 copper because it's plated and got various little coatings on it, but it's pretty well all copper, nothing magnetic. So not much value there. The springs and the hardware, you guys know I sell, I don't know, maybe a couple of dollars because the springs are always good. A few other little sundry bits over here we're not going to talk about. A little bit of brass in the middle here, but it's too light to worry about. So as you can see, this is what we're chasing. We have some really nice silver buttons on these ones. Now, what are they worth? Well, I found some eBay listings, as I mentioned earlier, and I'll put a picture up now. And the guy was selling, as you can see from the picture, pretty well what I've got on the scales here. Okay, we have silver contacts on their mounting pieces of metal, but not too much extra metal. I think I wouldn't get away with these ones because there's too much metal for one little contact. But the guys who sold these, I saw a couple of listings, around about half a kilo of them, and they sold for about $125 per lot. Now, I don't know if the buyer's getting good value. I suspect the buyer's ripping himself off, but the fact is that these sold, and I've seen them sell before like that. Anyone that is experimenting with silver recovery may not have an avenue to acquire these, and will happily grab a half kilo lot off eBay for $100 or $120. But based on that price, we've got 150 grams of them just here. If I wanted to add to that, I could certainly clip these ones down. I mean, it's copper, they're fairly soft. I could just clip that end off with the contact and throw it to the pile. The rest of it can go straight in the copper. Same with these ones. There's lots of silver buttons on all these, but they do need to be clipped off because there's a bit too much metal with them. So if he's getting, let's bring it down to $100 for half a kilo on eBay, and he was charging postage on top of the $125. $100 for half, that's $200 a kilo. We've got 150 grams here. So what's that? 200, that's $30. Am I right? $30? If we can get $30 for that, admittedly we'd probably have to pay fees, but if I've rounded things down, if that's worth $30, then in that case, these contact breakers are definitely worth pulling apart if you can establish the good ones that have these bits in them. Now, the other option is some of them, if we get a close-up of this, hopefully we get some focus for you. So there's the silver button on that side. Incidentally, some of these circuit breakers had never been used. The contacts look brand new, but I didn't know that, and I'm not prepared to sell second-hand circuit breakers given that they could go into a situation which might be dangerous if they were faulty. Now, that's on a copper bracket. It's pure copper, it's not plated. You can definitely see the nice silver colour of the button. Sometimes they have a bit of black tarnish over them, which you can wipe your finger over and it pretty well disappears. The back of that one is nice and silver as well. I would suggest that most likely is a solid piece of silver in there. When I say solid silver, it's possibly like 80 or 90% silver. They do mix them, they alloy them with different metals. I think they even use cadmium, which possibly stops arcing when they connect. So they do modify the silver to make it more suitable in electrical conditions. And that brings another point. If you're going to try and purify it yourself and melt down the silver, you do have to be careful of fumes because cadmium is quite a dangerous metal. But that one looks to be a silver. I don't think there's any copper. Is there copper in there? It's a bit hard to tell. The light, yeah, maybe it is plated. Maybe I can see a little bit of copper underneath that. Let's try a file across it. Well, if it is plated copper, there's a fair bit of silver over it. So the other option is to punch them out and to sell the contacts separately as silver. Now, some of them we're not going to do any good there because if we see this one here, nice silver button. Let's get a focus again. Nice silver button on top. And if we spin it over, you can see the back has a copper look, especially in the middle. So that's clearly just been silver plated. Admittedly, the button will be quite a thick piece of silver. Otherwise, it would be pointless using the silver, because the idea of the silver is it's a really good electrical conductor. So anyway, the problem is that some of them, the button is actually copper with a thin plate of silver over the top, or at least a thick enough plate to do the job. Others are a complete solid silver lump. That one is definitely copper on the back. So the bracket it's on is copper, but it's silver plated, and the back of the button you can see is just raw copper, and the button on that side has a silver top on it. So even by punching these contacts out, you're not going to have pure silver, even though I did see an eBay seller selling the contact buttons on their own, removed from the brackets, and he got almost equivalent to $500 a kilo. He didn't have that much. And the price of, say, 90% silver, guaranteed silver is almost that. So I think some buyers on eBay may be ripping themselves off. I don't think I'm going to go to the trouble of removing the buttons, but I may do a bulk listing of all these with the silver buttons and see how they go. They're going to be much better than copper price, guaranteed. And I think if we can get $30 for ones like that, and maybe if I just cut these down, that might be the best way to go. Being copper, they should be fairly soft. Let's cut that with some tin snips. There we go. So that will be acceptable based on the listings I saw. That can go in our copper. So I think that's how I'll deal with them. I'll group them all up like this. A selection of good silver buttons on smallish brackets and eBay them down the track. I think that's where the money is in circuit breakers. So I've just clipped the rest of them. I didn't worry too much about getting them too close. Some of them are only just the button. Some have still got a fair bit of a bracket against them, but that's better, I think, than the picture I saw on eBay. And if we're working on $200 a kilo for that sort of stuff, that's about $36. Leaves us with the rest of the copper. Some of the brackets can go in with our candy copper, and the rest go as number 2. But there's a bit over a quarter of a kilo there, so I don't know, let's say nearly $3. I guess if we add in 30 cents or so for that, well, that makes that $3, which takes us almost to 40. If we say jot down $1 for the hardware, a few other bits and pieces, easy get $40 return from this box. Now, it's been a journey of discovery. I hope you've learned something. I've certainly learned how to tell if a circuit breaker is worthwhile and whether I should put it straight in the e-waste box. I do like these silver buttons. I didn't mention before, not all of them are actually pressed in. Some of these, they're like rivets, but others are actually sweated on. I don't think I've got any here. But there was a couple that came off. And these have been like essentially soldered onto the bracket. That's the back of it. I can't quite turn that over. There's the front of it. It's a bit tarnished. But that button could be totally silver. I really don't know. And perhaps it might be worth putting those in a jar separately. But I think we're fooling ourselves if we put them aside and thinking we'll get into precious metal recovery one day and buy all the chemicals and set up a lab and purify our silver and gold for that matter. I honestly think that the time and the chemicals involved, if you're doing it as a hobby, great, but economically it's not going to be viable. If you're a scrapper and you want a bit of a return and you don't want to spend a lot on setting up equipment, knock these apart, pick out the good ones like I've shown you, knock these apart, group them up and sell them on eBay. You'll get a pretty good return, certainly much better return than a scrapyard will ever give you. And that's my take on circuit breakers. The other thing, of course, with home chemistry, if you're going to try and sort out your precious metals, not only the expenses, but there's some dangerous things involved, and you don't know what's been alloyed with the silver or any other metals that you're smelting. Fumes, acids, I'm going to keep well away from that. I can't see a good return there for the home hobbyist. So, look, everyone would love to have a dream of putting some gold-plated something into a bucket and come out the next morning and there's a nice ingot of gold at the bottom of it. It's not that simple. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this. It's another box out of my emergency storage shed, and that's more important than anything. Stay tuned for the next one. We will look at those washing machine timers at some stage. If you'd like to, let me know in the comments. Catch you next time, guys. Bye for now.